I'm Dr. Hannah Rudman, and at SRUC my focus is on digital technologies and data innovations. We all love digital technologies as new, better, faster, cheaper ways to do things, but how are they used in the natural economy sector? We've come to the Bunloit Estate today to find out how they're using digital technologies to measure and to track the impact of their work on the estate. There's a growing awareness of the value of nature, of the natural economy and its assets. Society now knows about it, but last year it acquired economic value too, and that offers a new set of income and value generating opportunities for farmers and for land managers. I'm going to be explaining some of those new economic innovations that are developing. And interestingly, these new opportunities increasingly require digital measurement processes that create digital data as their evidence. To explain what I mean about how new economic innovations in the sector are requiring that digital transformation, today we're at Bunloit. It's an estate outside Drumnadrochit on the edge of Loch Ness, and the team here have been busy gathering data evidence that they need with digital devices. All companies and sectors need to access new opportunities to offset their own emissions, and it's great to see the natural economy sector, businesses like Bunloit, engaging and developing projects that will offer new natural economy projects and products to society. We're here, it's a beautiful day on the bonny banks of Loch Ness. Jeremy, tell me a little bit about why you're here.
Well, Hannah, I'm a climate campaigner. I've been worried about global warming since the mid-1980s and working on it since the late 1980s in different ways. And so in my head, this is the last climate campaigning project of my life. And I really want to try and make a contribution to the natural capital revolution. I had the great privilege of seeing, experiencing, being part of the solar revolution, you know, a much needed success story in humankind's effort to create a kind of survival reflex, as I think of it. But the thing about solar and wind and all the other things we know we have to do with hardware displacing fossil fuels, replacing fossil fuels, no matter how successful we are with that, we know we've got to take lots of carbon dioxide down out of the atmosphere. So I'd really love to try and help create a project that could do that. So the Bunloit Rewilding project started here in 2020 on this estate. We've now acquired another estate, and on both of these we're doing everything we can, will be doing everything we can to suck extra carbon dioxide down out of the atmosphere. But we can't do that at the expense of biodiversity and the biodiversity collapse. And so we've got to tackle that in parallel, and we're wedded to that idea. So we want to try and show that successful businesses can be created with these nature-based solutions, but at the same time we want to contribute to the investability of these new business models in the system change we're going to need in land management if we're to survive these existential crises.
So Jeremy, what natural capital assets do you have here at Bunloit?
Well, we're very lucky. It's not a huge estate, 1,200 acres, but it's a beautiful collage of virtually all the habitats that are part of the game. So we've got different types of woodland here, really ancient, broadleaf, native woodland. We've got stands of Scots pine, and we've also, of course, got lots of monoculture plantations, conifer plantations. So all the different types of woodland, and then we've got, as you see, pasture here, not large areas of it, but enough to do experimentation and attend to the pasture. And we've also got peatlands up on top of the estate with not very big, but surprisingly thick peat, up to 4 meters thick. So we are monitoring as closely as we can what's going on in all these areas, all these habitats with the carbon and the biodiversity. And what we're really hoping to do is to basically provide a sort of contribute to the provision of catalogues, do-it-yourself catalogues for other estate owners who perhaps aren't motivated the same way as I and my compadres are, but know that they're going to have to change in the future, and please make it easy for us. And so we're going to try and help do that.
What will help the biodiversity net gain? Those are great carbon sequestration projects. How does that achieve biodiversity too?
Well, the first thing, we've done a lot of conferring with the expert community in the first year. We didn't want to just sort of charge in like a bull in a china shop and do stuff. So we've had a whole year of conferring with dozens and dozens of individual and experts and organisations. And the one thing that, of course, we find that the experts disagree on a lot of what needs to be done. But one of the things that most everybody agrees on is that if we get rid of the monoculture conifer plantations, that will help both with carbon, actually big time with carbon, but also with biodiversity, because they tend to be pretty low biodiversity places. And if we replace them with regenerating mixed species, then we anticipate seeing a really good biodiversity response. This pasture here, as you see behind me, when we came to the estate in February, was bold as a golf course. You could have batted a golf ball around it all day and found your ball every time. Now you couldn't, and you can see what's happening. The pasture is resting, not totally. We've got Highland cattle here. We're trying to get back to a sort of more a mix of grazers that, the rewilding orthodoxy of having a grazing guild that's as close as you can get it to an ancestral one. So we've got Highland cattle here. We're very lucky to have wild boar on the estate, possibly too many wild boar. We have to discover, and we'll have some Highland ponies as well. So it's not as though wildlife is being grazers are being excluded, far from it. But I think here we expect to see a really interesting response in the flora, and we won't be planting on this pasture. Well, that was the first thing that came to my mind. There's plenty of area for fresh planting and additionality, but so many ecologists have sort of virtually pleaded with me to leave the pasture as it is. That's what we're going to do.
And this restoration work, this rewilding work, sounds expensive. What, in your mind, is the business model for how you can make that work? Well,
there's no escaping the fact that the governments have to do what they say they're going to do. And both in Westminster and in Edinburgh, they know we're in deep trouble with the climate meltdown and the biodiversity collapse. And they both said we're going to introduce, really big changes in land management. We need them to do that. And right now it's not clear what the rules of the road will be at all, and we're of course hoping to help policymakers make the right sensible decisions. But if they do what governments sometimes do, which is say one thing and then do nothing, we'll be in a bit of trouble. And then you have to fall back on the other things, the obvious things you can do with beautiful land like this. Ecotourism, you can stop your cash burn, slow your cash burn a bit with ecotourism, meanwhile helping people understand and get their hands on nature recovery. You can do forestry, so felling the monoculture plantations, which we're confident there's a strong ecological reason for, is also quite remunerative because the timber price is high. So you can slow things down, but ultimately it's going to be very difficult to, unless there is this change in policy. And I firmly believe that I'm not cynical about the politicians. I think they're going to do it, and I think they're going to have to do it. And vast numbers of people will be putting them under pressure to do it, because my experience is that, it's not controversial any longer to say that we have potentially existential crisis with climate meltdown. I mean, if we keep going, we're going to lose, these woods are going to be burning, the peat's going to be burning, it's going to be a catastrophe. You can see it in what's happening elsewhere in the world. And with biodiversity. If we keep melting biodiversity down the way we are with traditional agricultural techniques and all the other things that are contributing, we're going to lose our pollinators and we won't be able to feed ourselves, or at least only the rich will be able to feed themselves.
You described there a number of other businesses that you can do on the estate: ecotourism, the harvesting of timber. That sounds like exciting new jobs for this community here.
Well, that's right. And for me, and I hope lots of other people as well, there's another element to this. You can't beat these problems without, really serious engagement of local communities. And that includes a rural Green New Deal, so you employ as many people on the land in good, healthy outdoor jobs, guardians of the growing wildlands. And that's what we've started to do at Bunloit. We've now got a team of a dozen here, and we will employ as many folk as the cash flow allow us to do, because whilst I said it's important for business models to be economic, I think on this estate, if I don't have shareholders, I can make a fool of myself and lose a bit of money without coming unstuck and letting people down.
Kirsty, you're operations manager here. Tell me a little bit about what you're measuring and why.
This year at Bunloit, we've been measuring our baseline levels of carbon and biodiversity on the estate, because we want to then compare against this baseline in future years using the same methodology to measure the carbon sequestration and biodiversity on the estate, to hopefully measure some changes and increase, which is what we're aiming for.
And you've been using some different methodologies, haven't you?
Yes, we've been experimenting with a few different methods, because we're sort of using this year to find the optimum combination for the purpose, and then use that to replicate in future years to monitor the changes. So we've been using a mixture of digital technology as well as traditional methods, and also modelling and that sort of thing, so quite a good combination.
Can you give me an example of when you've used a traditional method and then you've used a digital method to measure the same thing?
Mm-hmm. Sure, so for the carbon baselines, we've been experimenting using modelling calculations from the Woodland Carbon Code to estimate the carbon stocks in our woodland. This would come under the Tier 2 of the IPCC tiers for methods to estimate greenhouse gas emissions and removals, because this is using area-defined data, so it's from case studies, so not from the estate, data from elsewhere, and then also takes into account the climatic and land use systems of the area. So we've been using that to estimate the carbon in our woodland on the estate, but we've also been using a different technology which would come under the Tier 3 category. So this is a more granular way of measuring the carbon stocks, and this is LiDAR, which is light ranging and detection. So this uses remote sensing via light waves to measure ranges, and we've been collaborating with Climate Solutions Exchange to do this. So what they've managed to collect from the estate is a very specific granular image of the biomass of the woodland, so down to the individual tree. And then they've been able to use this biomass to do calculations to calculate the carbon stock of the woodland. So the two differences there, you've got modelling, estimating from data elsewhere, from case studies, taking into account specific factors for the region and that kind of thing, versus actually the digital LiDAR measuring what's actually there on the estate in that specific area. So it's slightly more granular and specific. That's the Tier 3 of the IPCC.
So the IPCC Tier 2 modelling method, the IPCC Tier 3 measurement method, what do they achieve together?
Yeah, so the combination of these different tiers and different measuring methodologies will hopefully allow us to have a very robust and accurate measurement of the baseline carbon, and also we're very keen to experiment with these different methods and then share our experience and our results to inform natural capital verification science, so developing the best way to measure very accurately the carbon stocks or the biodiversity levels on your estate.
So the basement measurement you've done, you'll have to do more measurements through time in order to make any carbon credits. Tell us a bit about that.
Sure, yeah, so the The aim of measuring over time as well and repeating every year is to monitor the changes in carbon sequestration and biodiversity, which will hopefully then correspond to natural capital credits, which could become an income source. So the Woodland Carbon Code, and then potentially biodiversity net gain in the future if that becomes a thing in Scotland, and various other natural capital credit schemes that are on the go and developing. So yeah, it does take the time frame, a few years of measurement to be able to see what's going on and if there is an increase. So by using these really, hopefully a robust and accurate measurement using these methods will really give an informed credit. So it's actually reflecting the actual increase on the estate in carbon or biodiversity.
I'm with Craig, a local ecological consultant, and we're going to look at some of the digital devices that the estate is using to find out more about the habitat and fauna here. What is this, Craig?
Well, Hannah, we have a couple of camera traps basically.
Okay.
We have a kind of standard camera trap that I think most people are probably familiar with, which is just a passive infrared triggered by motion and heat, and these have been set up across the estate in a kind of fixed network to basically record the larger fauna that's moving around the state, so the larger mammal species, and they've been set up in a number of locations and can be set up to record video, photos, at different rates and sensitivities, night and day, so we get a full picture of our daytime fauna and nocturnal fauna. So what you've got is the camera right at the top here. This is your infrared, so what some refer to as a black flash. So in the daytime you get a colour picture, just exposed for normal colour light, and then at night you get an infrared flash, so you end up with a black and white picture. But most of that is unperceptible to most animals, so it doesn't disturb them. And then you've got here right in the middle the motion sensor, and then if you unclip, you've kind of got your control panel and various settings, so you can program it to video, photo, change the resolution, change the interval between the captures, so depending on whether you're trying to do a generic survey or you want to target specific species, you can program that accordingly. So there's about 16 of those set up in fixed positions across the estate and have been recording night and day for several weeks now.
And what powers it?
So it's powered by a series of AA batteries. Basically, we just have a little power bank in the bottom there, so we can put in 8 AA's. You can run standard, rechargeable, lithium. They don't work as well with rechargeable, which is the only annoyance with them. And they'll last arguably up to about 6 months, depending on the number of videos and photos obviously that they take.
Okay.
So yeah, really useful units that we can put out in remote areas.
So that's the camera. Where's the trap?
So the trap, well, effectively that's a trap in itself in terms of things walking past it and recording. But where these are, the kind of weak point of these is if you're looking at the smaller fauna, the kind of wood mice, the shrews, that are arguably as important as the bigger species, the boar and the deer. These are excellent at capturing the big species. The smaller ones, they don't do so well. But principally what we've done is put a close focus lens. So this is a standard photo lens that you would screw on front of a regular camera, and what that does is reduces the focal length, so it enables the camera to focus on something that's much closer to it. These cameras aren't by default set up to do that, so all we've done is literally blue tack a close focus lens on, tape around the infrared flash just so we don't overexpose the image, otherwise there's too much light coming out at such a short distance. And then what that enables us to do is take pictures at a much closer range. The tricky bit obviously is making the animal sit
in front of the camera,
in the right spot in front of the camera.
Right.
So to do that, what we've done is take a box like that, and then the bungee, if you just strap that around the back and hook him on,
brilliant,
that should stay put. And then what happens is we then put a little bit of seed bait in the front, and these have been cut to a distance that reflects the focal length of the lens that we've blue tacked to the front, so that any animal that now comes in to take that bait will be perfectly in focus. And therefore we can now get video and photos of all our small mammals, our shrews, our mice, our voles, our weasels. But we've also been finding we get a number of bird species. We still get the larger mammals. You'll still get a badger head or a pine marten that will come in and try and take the bait. But it gives us a whole new range of data on these smaller mammals that we were missing by just using the camera traps in their traditional way.
Craig, tell me about the app then that we're using to gather the data and track where the camera traps are.
So we've been using an app called Input, and with another colleague, fellow ecologist who's been working on the project. We've been putting an app together which effectively gives you a geographic information system on your phone, and it enables us to collect and record data, spatial data, in terms of locations and where we've set up camera traps and other survey equipment, onto a map on our phone, and then upload that via a cloud to a desktop GIS.
Okay. So what we're looking at here is a bird's eye view of the estate and its boundaries, and then these markers, CT14, CT06, that's going to be your classification of camera traps.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, they're the main camera traps that I refer to as using in a traditional way, that we've got this fixed network. As you can see, they're dotted all the way across the estate, across all the major habitat types. So we can go and locate those specific camera traps and navigate to them using the GPS on our phone. So it makes them really easy to find. We've also got, as you'll see, there's a number of orange dots. They refer to the small mammal camera traps. So again, we know exactly where all of those have been placed. So one, we can go and find them to check them, to service the batteries, change the memory cards. But equally, when we come to process the data, we want to know, well, where was that data actually recorded in the field? And we can go back to this information that we've generated via the app on our phone.
So you've set it up on the app. Can I get the app and be a ranger for the day, gathering data and sending it back to your central system?
Absolutely. Anyone can download the app. It's a publicly available app that a lot of people are using, and then they tailor it towards their specific needs. So we've been able to set up the rangers, ourselves, volunteers that we've had working on the project, and then they can access different data layers and be able to go out and collect specific field data and navigate to those locations all on their mobile phone.
Fantastic. Craig, we've got another digital device here, a tablet and a widget in the top. Tell me about this widget.
So this widget, as you call it, is our bat detector. It's actually termed an echometer, one of the first generation echometers. Basically enables us to detect and identify the bat species that we've got across the estate.
What's the app doing?
So what you've got is basically a high frequency microphone,
Yeah.
because all bats are echolocating, so pinging out sounds at a frequency that is normally above our hearing range. So the widget there, our bat detector, is picking up those frequencies, and then we've just got an app that's widely available on the tablet, and what that's doing is processing that sound and then running a series of identification algorithms, and that enables us to, by the frequency, identify the bat species that we've recorded. So for all the UK bat species, we can select the part of the world that we're in, record the bats, and then the app will generate an auto identification of those individual species.
So that's like their signature. They've got a frequency signature that recognises the signature and tells you how many times, how many bats have come past you as you've been going on your walk.
Exactly that, yeah. All bats have a unique frequency at which they echolocate. Some are very similar, so it takes a little bit of effort to discern between the different species. But this gives us a pretty good identification. And yeah, as we walk a fixed route, a translate around the estate, this enables us to record all those different species and know where they are. And what we can do is link that device up to a little Bluetooth GPS, and then that will give us a fixed position, a GPS location for every single recording. So we effectively generate a bat map for each route that we walk and by all the different species.
Brilliant. And if I wanted to join you on the survey, would that be straightforward?
Yeah, really simple. So if you had the app downloaded, all we'd need to do was plug that in your phone really simply.
Yep.
You then turn on the app on your phone, select that you're in the UK, so it brings up the right species to run the identifications, and then walk the route that you want to survey.
Fantastic.
Anybody with a mobile device then on that app can then become involved in the data collection across the estate.
That's fantastic. And what if we wanted to do a more static survey? So this is quite an expensive piece of kit. This is definitely an expensive piece of kit. And what if we wanted to just leave something in a tree or near a pond?
Yeah, so these are very much handheld devices that we're using with the person present to do the survey. So not ideal to leave lying around. So in that case, if we want to leave something for a longer period of time, we will use what we generically call a static detector. And that looks like something like that, a little bit more robust, not something I'm going to carry around. What we have in here is our detector, which is hidden away in our pelly case, and then we've actually got a 12-volt battery to power that detector, and that detector can then be programmed basically to turn on at a certain time of day. So we can turn it on just before dusk when the bats are coming out and becoming active, and turn the detector off just after dawn, again when the bats are returning to roost. So a bit like a camera trap, this detector will turn itself on, listen through the period of the night or the time that you've set, and then record every echolocation that comes within its detection range. And what we've got on the end is just basically the low-tech version of a little window with a microphone, so that'll pick up the sounds as they fly by. And a unit like that we can then seal up, lock it down, and put that either up a tree. We can put it out in a prominent open area such as the pond behind us, which is quite often a good feeding area for bats. And then we would normally leave these out for about a week or so at a time, and then come back and again extract a memory card from them and download all the recordings and work out the species that we've got.
I visited Bunloit last in September, and it's now November 2021, and the results of Bunloit's carbon and biodiversity baseline measuring that we've just heard about from Jeremy, Kirsty and Craig are now in. The Natural Capital report gives us the results from the first year's work, and if you'd like to download it in full, go to bunloit.com. From the carbon modelling, in fact, the news isn't great. The carbon emissions from the peatlands more than cancel out the sequestration achieved by the woodlands. An estimated 866 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent a year is being sequestered in the woodlands and grasslands, which cover 86.3% of the estate. But the open degraded peatlands, which cover around 13.7% of the estate, are responsible for an estimated loss of 1,106 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent annually. That means an estimated average net loss of 240 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent a year for the estate. There are a couple of things that Bunloit can do to reverse this. The first is to fell non-native conifer plantations which sit atop the peat. And that would let compressed bogs breathe again and healthy moss grow back, allowing carbon dioxide to be drawn down into the wetland. Another route is peatland restoration, in particular by blocking drainage channels, because that also promotes the moss growth and retains water in the peat bogs. Broadleaf trees will be planted elsewhere on the estate to compensate for the carbon stock loss in the plantations. So these actions should create a net saving of 60,747 tonnes, but that's over a century. The biodiversity research, however, showed Bunloit is of international importance, particularly in terms of lichen communities, and it's of regional importance for unimproved grasslands. Here we can see the digital map where the surveys took place, where the small mammal box camera traps, the blue dots, and static bat surveys, the purple dots, were. 6 of the 10 bat species known in Scotland were picked up. The team also counted 77 bird species and 11 of the 19 dragon and damselfly species in the Highlands, as well as amphibians and reptiles were spotted too. As well as working with the small box camera traps and app that Craig showed us for counting small mammals, the Bunloit team worked with Nature Spy and Mammal app to work out what larger animals were on the estate. Bigger digital camera traps were mounted on trees, and wildlife counted on the site included sika, roe and red deer, wild boar, badgers, foxes and red squirrels. The digital camera traps and mobile app tools not only made counting easier and faster, as we've already heard about, it also created a wealth of images and video that people simply love to see. The experience and learnings from Bunloit's first year has led to the team setting up a new nature recovery company. And here's Kirsty again to tell us more about that.
Highland Rewilding Limited will scale the work that has been underway for the past 18 months at Bunloit by replicating locally appropriate versions of the Bunloit model on other suitable tracts of land across the Highlands. The first project for Highland Rewilding is the ownership of a nature-based solutions business on Bunloit Estate in Aberdeenshire. Here we will focus on the following land management themes: afforestation of native species, sustainable forestry, regenerative agriculture, ecotourism, eco-building and natural capital credits. As we are very aware of the issues of land ownership inequality in Scotland, we also hope to do a circa £2 million retail crowdfunding campaign to widen the shareholder base and let in as many local community Scots as possible at some stage as citizen rewilders. If you're interested in joining the Highland Rewilding team on this journey, head to the website to find out more. Please do sign up to our mailing list there if you would like to register your interest as a citizen rewilder. If you're interested in learning more about becoming a founding funder, contact Jeremy Leggett directly. Thank you.
There's a growing demand for projects like this one at Bunloit, demand from the financial sector as they begin to offer natural capital products. There's a demand from citizens who see projects like this as a great way for the land-based sector to do something for climate change and the biodiversity crisis. And there's demand from government who have to ensure that the country gets to net zero in the next few decades. If you've got a project you'd like to feature, please get in contact with us.